That's what I'm talking about, son. Get you some of that daggone pie.
Woo-hoo! Looky there. There's your bug-eyed big one right there.
Getting started. We're getting started.
Here's what I'm talking about. Gosh dang gorilla.
Let's go, baby. Straight meat. God, look at that biggin.
All right, welcome in everybody to the podcast. This is the BAM Pod, and I am your host, Big Ed. And let me tell you, I've been wanting to interview this guy for a little while, and I know that you guys love to hear from him because he is one of the top anglers out there. He has been one of the top anglers for a very long time now. He does some amazing things on the water, and a lot of people follow him. But tonight we have Fletcher Shryock, and I did that right. And let me tell you, took a while to get it right. But hey, Fletcher, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you so much, and thanks for getting the name right. But if you butcher it later, don't sweat it. We're good. So
No
thanks
problem
for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I'll tell you what, from now on, it's just Fletcher. So,
That's right.
you know,
got it out once. I heard
it. That's all that counts. I can record it from now on. We were talking about, the last couple of weeks, kind of talking about the different changes in the weather that's going on and how that affects the fishing. And on this show, what we'll really try to do is try to help people become better anglers. And with you being one of the top anglers in the country, it's great to hear the way you want to approach it. And one of the things I'd asked you before the show was a little bit about, what's your best tactics and what you kind of like around here. And one of the things that really, came out was grass and how much you enjoy fishing the grass. And with the months coming up, we've got, you said, grass right now is at its peak and it's some of the best it's going to be. Whereas September and things like that, they're going to be dying off. Now, if you're we'll start this by saying, if you're fishing a lake that has grass, because you did say that. So, and if you're not, then, find something else to do. But is this what you consider the best time of year to catch bass?
No, this is September, I think, is the absolute worst time to catch bass pretty well throughout the country. There may be an exceptional. Florida can still possibly be good, and then obviously up north, smallmouth fishing can still be really good in September. The wind starts to blow, but the smallmouth fishing is always good anytime the ice is off. But yeah, overall, September sucks. But yeah, like I was saying, if you can go fish a grass lake or a lake that even has a little bit of grass, the fish are definitely more grass oriented this time of year. And I think the biggest reason for that is, number one, it provides oxygen. It's been hot, continues to be hot. The dog days of summer are starting, there's a lot of reasons why they would gravitate towards the grass this time of year, for sure. And that's really what I like to target. Now, if you're fishing a lake that doesn't have grass, it's not going to be near as good for the most part, generally speaking. That's going to suck even worse. But it's all, whenever you go into tournament fishing and things like that, you take a grass lake in the fall, in September, it still could take, 17, 18, maybe 20 pounds. That's going to be on a really good place. But, you take a place that doesn't have grass, man, you may be grinding to catch 7 or 8 or 10 pounds, for the win, for a place that usually kicks out a 15 or 20 pound bag for a win. So, it's all relative, obviously, in tournament fishing. But if I had to have my pick, it would be to have a lake full of grass. It's most developed that it's going to be all year, as long as they haven't sprayed it, and the bait fish get in there, the bluegill get in there. There's just so many reasons why it's good this time of year. Yeah,
one of the things you said in there was, some of the bait fish really start to school up and get into that grass. Is that still what you're targeting that grass with right now? Is it when you go out? Is it like, hey, I got a spinnerbait in my hand, I got a swim bait in my hand, I got, something small or something big, or this is, I guess the other side of that too would be the maturity level of those fish this time of year. I guess they're going to be the bigger bait. So are you throwing, what is it that, are you totally targeting that? Or are you flipping creature baits and looking for crawdad bites? When does that kind of transition?
I will say that in September, what makes it really tough, worse than October can actually have some phenomenal days. I feel like, just generally speaking, right? In September, you start to see all them small bait fish balls, those newly fresh, fresh shad, yearling shad, call it, real small bait. They start to pull up near the surface. And I think that's an oxygen level thing because the water's whatever, we'll call it 90 degrees or, warm for whatever lake and whatever region. The oxygen starts to die off deeper. I feel like it pushes that bait fish up there. Everything's still hot. For the most part, pretty stagnant, lack of rain. And I feel like, obviously them bait fish eventually start to migrate. You start to get a couple of them cool nights. And what happens and what I think makes the fishing tough, one of many reasons, but them bass start to get on that small bait. And it's very, very hard. I've had them schooling on those small baits or them small groups of bait fish before, schooling all around me, and you cannot catch one. Even if you're throwing, say, a 1/4 ounce Bill Lewis rattle trap type of thing. Like sometimes they'll get so keyed in on the tiny stuff that it's really hard to trick them with a normal size lure that we would throw any other time of year. There's a lot of things that make it tough. I think I kind of got off a little bit on what the original question was.
No, you're good.
But whenever that, when that bait fish is present, and then another thing too in September that you don't see in October, September you start to see a lot more in October. September you have hot, it's hot, and then you start to get some cool nights, but it's still so dang hot that everything's just at this weird holding point. And then once you start getting a couple cool nights, and we finally got that here in Tennessee, North Alabama just recently, and I was out fishing last night, and I could tell it made all the difference. It's starting to make those bait fish push towards the back of the pockets because that's where the cooler water is going to be. That's where the grass is going to be. That's where the oxygen is going to be, for the most part, generally speaking. And then the bass eventually, come October, make a full migration along with the bait to the backs of a lot of those places. Just generally speaking, we want to say the backs. Every fishery is a little bit different. I don't want to mislead anyone. This is a general rule. They follow that bait. The cooler the nights get, the shorter the days get, the more they're going to start following and chasing that bait. And then eventually in October, I'm going to say you're going to have a collision where obviously the days are getting shorter, so you can't enjoy it as much, but you will have collisions in October with topwater or maybe a 1/4 ounce trap but there's so many different options, right? And you'll have that collision where you finally catch the bass actively feeding on the bait, and all hell breaks loose for, call it a week, couple weeks or whatever. And then it usually gets a little bit slower, but October can be really good.
Yeah. You mentioned that there, the topwater bite. And I think that's one of those, for me, that's always been one of the most exciting ways to fish. And it's, and I think that for everybody too, is that once you start getting that topwater bite, with October coming up and some of that bait really schooling back there, is this one of those times when topwater for you, does it really start to make that change? And I know September sucks. I've gotten that part, but is it this time of year that you start going to the topwater and looking for that bite more than anything? And does it produce bigger fish, the topwater, compared to
this time?
Some of the other stuff, yeah.
Yeah, this time of year, I feel like if there was one safe bet, hands down across the country, one safe bet, throw a topwater from basically morning, noon, and night, and that's going to be your best chances to not only catch numbers, but to catch quality, just generally speaking. I'm a big flipper. I like to punch. That's obviously being on the Tennessee River, near Gunnersville, Nickajack, the whole chain. I have an option to punch grass in places. But then you also still have areas where the bass use it just like they do anywhere else where it doesn't mat up,
Right.
And a lot of those same theories apply out there. So, yeah, you can definitely take a topwater. And I feel like a lot of times it's, your bone color, your white, you're trying to match the hatch, some of the smaller stuff if they're on smaller bait. Once you get into October and you've had several cool nights and you start to see those bigger shad get active, then I'm fully comfortable going to just a standard, more standard topwater, full size buzzbait, things like that.
And what is your favorite, topwater to really to go after fish with? I mean, if you're searching, if you're looking, what's that one that you're going? I'm putting this in my hand and I ain't putting it down. I know a lot of guys have said buzzbaits, chatterbaits, or not chatterbaits, but whopper ploppers, Zara spooks. What's that one bait that Fletcher I got to throw this. This is what I find my good fish on.
Yeah, hands down for me, it's the buzzbait, just because of the situations that I find myself in a lot of times around some kind of heavy cover, whether it be bushes or what grass, whatever. A lot of times the areas that I choose that I seek typically aren't a place that I can just pick up a spook and throw it around. You know what I mean? That buzzbait, I can cover a lot of water. It's pretty dang weedless. You know, I can hang a fish up and cover and get them out. Yeah, I mean that single hook, the buzzbait's definitely my favorite topwater for sure.
Now, when you're throwing that bait and you're, you know, you talked a lot about the bait are small right now still, and they're going to be small for a little bit, but there's going to be better ones coming up. Does that matter when you're throwing that buzzbait and are you throwing it with a trailer? When you're looking for better fish, and you're throwing it without a trailer when you're targeting those smaller shad and trying to look like those smaller shad, I should say, not targeting them, but trying to look like that smaller bait. Is that what you're doing without a trailer, or do you throw with a trailer anyways?
You know, I really like just throwing them in September when they're on the real small bait. It's such a pain, but just a little 1/8 ounce white buzzbait is such a killer. You know, just a tiny compact bait with the skirt trimmed down. You know, it just looks like a small, kind of like what they're already feeding on. That's definitely and you got to use things. You got to have the wind at your back. I mean, you could probably, most guys would want to throw on a spinning rod, but that's one very deadly bait this time of year.
Okay, little
When they're
1/8 ounce
still on the
spinnerbait.
small bait, you know.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
kind of,
little 1/8 ounce buzz bait.
little 1/8 ounce buzz bait. I think that's, a lot of people don't want to throw that, like you said, because it's, I mean, when you think of a buzz bait, you want to throw it on a bait caster, you want to throw it on a stiffer rod, blah blah blah. But like you said, if you're throwing that 1/8 ounce one, go down. Do you consistently throw it on a spinning rod at that point, or do you still throw it on a bait caster?
I've done both, and I just try to stick with the bait caster and just keep the wind at my back. I don't ever throw it into the wind. You know what I mean?
Right.
You'll end up hearing some bad words in my boat. So I just keep the wind at my back, trying to keep all that stuff, you know, in the forefront of my mind. You know, trying to utilize every way you can to get it out away from the boat. On top water fishing, lone casts are so important. So you got to utilize, you know, every advantage you can. And honestly, I guess it really doesn't matter what top water it is. I'd probably throw it with the wind at my back.
Yeah.
Just because casting distance is such a big deal, but that's all another conversation. But
no, it's not enough for the conversation. It's a perfect one for this one, because it was the next question I was going to ask you is, when you're throwing that top water, do you like to have it further away from the boat, or are you, I mean, everything's pretty quiet these days. I get, trolling motors are quiet. Electronics are not as like they used to be. Nothing's clunky in the boat. So does it matter to you how far away from the boat you can get it? Or is it like, you know what, I'm just going to throw this thing 10, 15 feet in front of me and just keep going? Just quick. Or is it more of a, I want to make the longest cast I can and bring it right down a grass line or right down that piece of cover? Or does it really matter?
For me, when I watch a guy make real short presentations with whatever, a frog, or Ish will do that with a frog, like super up close, skip it around. Like me mentally, I like that distance. I feel like whether they hear you, I feel like they can see you. Honestly, I feel like they can see us at a certain distance out, depending obviously where they're hanging out at, blah, blah, blah. Every situation is a little bit different, but yeah, I've definitely noticed. I consider it, or I call it, a buffer zone around my boat. And obviously it changes in varying conditions and times and all that. But there's a buffer zone around the boat in which I feel like you cannot catch one. Just statistically speaking, I want to have a better than 50% chance of catching one. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a buffer zone around the boat. And I feel like with top water, the buffer zone's even further. That's just my opinion. You have to be able to make accurate casts. Somewhere between making an accurate cast and the longest that you can throw the dang thing, wherever those two lines intersect, that's where it needs to be, like where you can put it accurately at a distance. That's going to give you your best chance. There's no question. Now, will they bite you up close? Yeah, they do, because I've watched other guys do it. It happens to me sometimes, but overall, I'm going to take the distance.
Yeah. Okay. And that, and that's one of those things I think a lot of people, like you said, they're, they don't really think about, I got to get this thing as far away as I can. I don't know if I can make that cast, a super long cast and it be accurate. I think that comes down to good equipment, good line, that sort of thing too. But, this is a learning from you about, how to make good quality casts is also a very, important thing as well. I think guys go out and one of the things is equipment, and we should talk about that a little bit is this time of year, you're throwing smaller baits. You're trying to, match that hatch. You're throwing, there's going to be more wind coming up because we've got storms coming over. I don't know what it's like in the South as much, but I know there's a lot more storms there than there is here. And the kind of equipment that people buy, as much as I want to say, yeah, you can go down to Walmart, pick up any old rod and throw it out there and catch fish. That's probably true. But, we look at guys like you and you have, tons of rods and having sponsors and been doing it as long as you have and the success you've had. But we should probably talk about that a little bit is why is it important to have really good gear this time of year?
Bass U, folks. Information is pouring over. If you want to learn more about every lake, how to fish, shallow, deep, in between, skipping docks and rocks and cranking, slow wiggling, chatter, smattering, you get it at Bass U. We got the best of the best. If somebody's ever caught a bass on something and perfected the technique, we got you covered. Get on Bass U TV, check it out, sign up, be a member, be part of it, folks. Keep learning. I'm Gerald Swindle. Subscribe to Bass U.
Well, I'll say, whenever I think of really good gear, I don't necessarily even think of price point when it comes to a lot of techniques that I do in fishing. We're talking about a buzzbait here, and guys think, oh, you need to have a $300 rod to throw a buzzbait on. And dude, truth of the matter is, like, I could go to Walmart, just about any Walmart, walk in there and walk out of there with a really good buzzbait, maybe 2 buzzbait rods, like for a smaller buzzer, like what I was talking about, and then your regular size one. There's a lot of actions in those, in those stores or whatever. Like there's a lot of good actions, like for a lot of general, like casting and retrieving actions that you don't have to have anything real fancy or expensive to do, especially this technique that we're talking about. I did want to mention, I think a lot of guys like throwing top water on braid. I originally years ago started throwing a buzzbait on mono. Then I went to braid. I thought that was better for a few years, and I made a full circle back to monofilament. And that's been a huge game changer. So here I am. A lot of guys are talking forward facing sonar and things like that. We're talking about September bass fishing, at least in the South where I'm at. You just need an 1/8 ounce buzzbait and some monofilament, some vicious monofilament, and the $30 rod from Walmart to go catch them.
Nice.
That's the forward-facing sonar deal overall in this region of the country isn't really going on right now. We just had a tournament at Watts Bar up the road. It really didn't play there for those guys, if anyone noticed. So it's definitely a time that you don't have to break the bank to catch them.
Well, and that's important this time of year for people to kind of understand that, one, as much as this month isn't really the good time of year, October coming up, it's been said last couple of weeks on this show that October is going to be one of those really good times of year. But if you're just new into this sport, if you're just now trying to go out, here's one of the top guys in the country. Fletcher's out here. This is a guy who has, $300 rods to throw if he wants to. He's got all the great equipment out there, and he's out there throwing a decent rod, a good rod, and he's throwing it with a good reel, and he's throwing it on mono, and he's throwing and catching really good fish. So pay attention to the fact that he just said you don't have to break the bank to go out this time of year and catch fish. Now, for sure,
and the rod I was going to add, the rod that I like to use is like a 7-foot medium heavy from Favorite to their Pro Series. They also make a couple rods. Favorite makes a couple rods in the Whitebird in that 7-foot range. I think they have a 7.4 medium heavy. It's also really good for slinging bigger top waters and things like that around. And I think that rod's like an $89 rod. So, there's definitely a lot of options to make it work.
Right. I mean, you're talking basically for $120 to $150 rod, reels, everything else. You're out the door, you're fishing, and you've got a versatile rod that you can go out there and catch with. And that's important this time of year. The guys aren't trying to break the bank to go out and do some fishing. You don't have to lie to your wife all the time, just once in a while, earlier in the year.
That's it. That's it.
This time of year, you can totally be truthful. No, that rod didn't cost me that much. It was $100. So
Yep. That's it.
But going into that a little bit more and talking about, you're in Tennessee, you're fishing Gunnersville, you're fishing Nickajack, you're fishing all these waters that have grass. Now, unfortunately, there's a bunch of places. I mean, where I live, we have the Delta, we've got Clear Lake and things like that where there is grass, but we also have places like Oroville. We have places like you guys just came, back down from the north, and you were up there fishing all those smallmouth up there in very little grass. What do you kind of tell people about fishing if you don't have grass, if you don't have things to target, consistently, and you're fishing those lakes that are just open? What's your kind of go-to method for finding fish like that? I mean, it's got to be, we got to find it.
So for me, this time of year, I'm going to leave the whole suspended forward-facing sonar conversation completely out of this, because honestly, I don't know enough. I still don't know if we all know enough about these fish yet and what's actually going on to say if that's the deal. I think there's definitely, fish under that smaller bait that can be caught doing that little hover stroll and things like that. I'm going to leave that out of it. Okay. So I don't know enough about that to really give a full opinion, but, most of it's just dirt, shallow fishing for me this time of year, just about anywhere I go that doesn't have grass. I feel like, the oxygen level gets, extremely low, deeper than fish push shallow. The fish have been, extra pressured up until this point. And I feel like, with so many people fishing out too is another thing. Mm-hmm. I just feel like shallow this time of year, like uncomfortable kind of shallow, can provide maybe not a great day of fishing when you consider the whole year, but right. You can definitely go shallow and pound around and get 4, 5, 6, 7 bites and win tournaments on places that you normally wouldn't fish that shallow. But September's that time where, it can go down like that.
Yeah. It's funny. I was able last year to fish Gunnersville, and to just fish in the South in general. And when I hear you guys talk about dirt shallow, I mean, I'm thinking, the whole lake Gunnersville only seemed like it was like the deepest part was like 10 or 12 feet. And so, I look at some of the lakes out there. I mean, Percy Priest is right there. Like you said, there's some of these other ones that are it's a lot of dirt and it's very shallow, the whole lake. So what do you consider really shallow? Like 1 foot, 2 foot, 5 feet, 10 feet? Because here in California, we're dealing with lakes that are, 300 feet deep. And I've never seen that down there.
Yeah, I even think every lake is different, but generally speaking, I want to say this too. Like there are certain lakes that they just live shallower than others. Like I said, I just don't want to be misleading because there's so many outliers with fishing, and there's a lot of outliers in every situation. So I don't ever want to really throw anybody off.
Well, it's not guaranteed. Fishing's not guaranteed, right? You're never guaranteed that everything's going to work as you would say it, out there. But at the same time, there's got to be a place for people to just, you talked about, let's start shallow. And some guys shallow might be 10 feet. For me, shallow is 10 feet, 12 feet, 15 feet. That's shallow. But other places,
I'll say this.
That's an entire lake.
But let's go with this then. Basically, whatever the depth line is that you can see the bottom, like a visibility line, right? Okay. So if I look into the water and I can say, it's about 2 feet. I'm saying shallow is going to be, 1 to 3 feet, or somewhere around that visibility line. If you're on a lake that's got, 8 foot of visibility, they're obviously going to live a little bit deeper. I'm going to tell you to focus on, that 8 to 5 range or something, you know what I mean? Or maybe that 10 to 5 range and start there. If you feel like you're getting bit on the 5, then move up to the 5 to 2. You take some scenarios like what my brother did, this year on the Elite, almost won at Lake Murray. Lake Murray's a super clear lake. When I say dirt shallow, like there's that 2 to 3 foot zone that's like, oh wow, that's pretty shallow. He was catching them literally on the bank. Like I don't know how a 4 or 5 pound bass and this is with clear water, probably 5 foot visibility. I don't know how the bass that were that big even got up there physically, let alone enough to hunt down a lure like that. So it can surprise you sometimes how shallow they can get. But I basically take that rule that I just gave you, the visibility line, if it's, you can see however far down, start around that and fish around that visibility line is a good place to go.
Yeah, and
As a general rule.
Yeah, and that's a great, rule right there, honestly, because that does give people, when you're looking at water, and it's like, hey, look, I can see down 4 or 5 feet, 6 feet, whatever it is. I mean, I've got lakes that I can see 25 feet, so I'm going to start fishing in 20 feet of water from now on. But I'm just saying, but that's a great point to get to that, if there's a question about how shallow is shallow. But like you said, I mean, there's always that time when they're, 2 feet, 1 foot, an inch. Like you said, how does a 5-pound bass sit in 3 inches of water? But
and I'll say this, my best day ever, whether it was all you could catch or biggest 5 or whatever, came at a place in North Carolina a few years ago at Heavy Hitters. When I say uncomfortably, like, I think my best 5 was right at 35 pounds, I think, or
wow.
I forget. No, maybe it was right at 30. Sorry, not 35. It was right at 30. And the overall, I forget. It was really good. But what was crazy was my trolling motor every now and then would like dig bottom.
Wow.
Fishing for those fish. So, and that's with the trolling motor up. It's not down. Like, that's with the trolling motor all the way up. And it would still, the skag of my trolling motor would still scrape gravel every now and then.
Wow.
So, and I was catching the fish shallower than that, right? So, yeah, there's certain like there's a lot more often than not. I feel like most lakes, they get that shallow. I will say that most lakes they will fit. They at some point in time during the year they get up to that shallow and are comfortable. So
yeah. Well,
than what most people would deem as fishable or something that they would waste their time with.
No, yeah, definitely. And that's like you said, it's tough to think that shallow, but they're there. So you got to. And that kind of leads me into one of the things you said earlier was about, you guys just came off of Watts Bar, you were up there fishing. And one of the things I noticed was that there were some guys who were really focused on the jig bite. And they were fishing, they're fishing a little deeper. I would, they were fishing that 5 to 7 foot range for a lot of them. Is this a time of year when the jig bite turns on, or is it more of a, I guess, just the end of it? I don't know how. I guess that's the best way to say it. Is it like the end of the jig bite, or is it the beginning of it, or is that something? I know that you like to flip. I know you like to pitch. I know you like to do that sort of thing. Is this a time of year when you think about that as well? Because we've talked about bait fish this entire time, and bait fish I think is going to be still the most prevalent. But with that jig bite, is it there now, or are you going to wait a little longer? When does that really turn on?
So I'll say this, as a flipper that likes to flip 365 days a year, if I can, I will.
Yeah.
I will say September is that 1 month, just generally speaking, general statements here. September is the 1 month that I feel the least amount of confidence in a jig or any sort of creature bait in my hand. That doesn't mean I still won't do it, because here's what I'll say about September too, and we haven't mentioned it much. Sometimes it's a junk fishing deal. Sometimes you have to flip one out of a laydown. You have to catch one on a bridge with a shaky head. You got to catch one on an MR6 crankbait, and you got to catch one on a buzzbait or what, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of junk fishing too.
Yeah.
But I will say it is probably the worst time to throw a jig or a bottom bait, generally speaking, the worst time.
Okay.
Now, obviously, guys, caught him with more on it. There's, like I said, I'm just generally speaking, it's the one time I have the least amount of confidence. For me, it would be September.
Wow. That's a big statement right there. I mean, honestly, because, you talk about grass, and I think when people think of grass and, how much it has to play a role if you're that into flipping, if you're that into pitching, you want to make those, you're just into that. how much that has to be something that you're thinking about, throwing the jigs, throwing the, the creature baits, flipping those into grass. I think that's what people think about the most when they think about fishing grass, is getting inside of that grass. But what I've kind of heard and what I've kind of taken away from what you said is that honestly, throwing over it or around it or down the sides of it can produce this time of year better than being inside of that grass. Was that a true statement?
No, absolutely not. So I'm trying to give you a lot of generals here and not speak just hundreds of. But no, if I can flip grass to some degree, some form of matted or just flip grass, and there's obviously there's enough grass present to be tall enough to flip and or punch. I'm going with that deal. 9 times out of 10, dude. I'm trying to like just give generals here. Outside of that, when you just talk general pitching, flipping, bottom baits, all that stuff, yeah, I'm trying to throw something moving, top water, chatterbait, that kind of thing in September more than any other time of month. But if punching is available, yeah, then Fletcher's going to punch. But if that's not, then yeah, I would rather wind something for sure.
Okay. I guess another thing that I was talking about or was listening to when you said was, cooling off of the water changing in just the slightest little temperature changes, 1, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, the fish start to move towards the bait starts to move towards the back, the bass go chasing them. If you have I guess a waterway where you have some water flowing, maybe you have a turbine that turns on, or the water gets, they open the dam or they do whatever in your area. There's a lot of that goes on. Certain lakes, they turn, they start generating power at a certain amount of time or whatever, and they turn on the water and the water starts going. With that movement of water, does it turn that grass on? And where do you kind of target, if it's, I guess, on and off, where do you kind of target grass this time of year? Because it is, such a tough time.
I'll say, general statement, obviously, again, I want to say like September, you're going to want to be more around that current, around that flow, for sure. More main river, main lake oriented.
Okay.
But they are very scattered in September. Here's the one thing I don't know if I've mentioned or we've mentioned. And the reason why the flipping thing and the bottom bait thing that's not that it doesn't exist. It's just harder than what it usually is. They just become so fixated on bait fish, typically smaller bait fish, like I mentioned. And that's what I just don't know if I'm not saying that we're going to pass up a crawdad on the bottom, because they're not. They're opportunistic creatures, but they are fixated on bait. So that changes, my bait preference as to why I was saying that earlier.
Okay.
So,
okay, but so I get, and we talked about the buzz baits and we talked about some of the top water stuff. What is it what's your favorite, I guess, bait fish imitation that you will use this time of year then? Because I've heard that from several people now, is that, this is bait fish time of year. You are going to catch more fish that are searching for bait fish right now. And is it like, hey, you know what, I'm going to pick up a drop shot and I'm going to throw that? Is it something that you're going to, I like throwing little swim baits. I like throwing, you talked about the rattle traps and that sort of thing. What really becomes your favorite bait for that moving, just covering water and going out there and catching fish? Other than the top water that you talked about.
Other than the buzz bait, which that's what I'm going to throw most of the time, just about anywhere. But the smaller chatterbait, they make I forget if it's a micro. There's a smaller chatterbait, just a smaller profile that Z-Man makes. Yamamoto actually has a little 3-inch Zaco now.
Oh, okay.
Because the 4-inch is what everyone's thrown for the last several years, and it's done really well. Well, they just made this year. I think they just dropped it a 3-inch version for those smaller chatterbaits. Whenever you're around that smaller bait, you can throw. I haven't done it yet, but I'm sure I could throw it on the back of a buzzbait. But that little chatterbait, that little white chatterbait, obviously is a great bait fish imitator. Even like a little white swim jig, I like to throw something a little bit smaller. Yamamoto just come out with a 3-inch Yamacraw. The 4-inch Yamacraw was great. They come out with a 3-inch. You throw that on the back of a swim jig in white, the smaller little compact 1/4-ounce jig that looks like that's more river fishing type stuff, but that's
Okay.
definitely one. Really hard to pass up a 1/4 ounce Bill Lewis trap and say, like, one of my favorite colors is Silverado. Just looks like just a pretty basic shad, but that's what a lot of the bait fish size are, is about the size of that 1/4 ounce Bill Lewis trap. So
Okay.
that's another really good one. Obviously, you've got the whole Demiki rig forward-facing sonar thing that's going to play across the country, I think, a lot this fall, because guys are still learning that whole deal. I'm still learning. I'm going to spend a lot of time this winter actually messing with it. But I think that could be a player too over those suspended fish, forward-facing sonar conversation thing too. But man, there's really a lot of things that work this time of year, junking around just to try to generate some bites. And like I said, if you're not in the grass, it's a struggle in the grass too at times. But when you're not around it, it's you junk your way around, do the best you can to try to put something together,
Okay, just basically waiting for October to get here. That's
yeah,
what we're
basically. but it just depends. Like, as a tournament fisherman, like,
Right.
I don't care if it takes 7 pounds to win or 27. Sometimes I'd almost prefer trying to grind it out to catch 7. Honestly, So it's all relative.
For nearly 100 years, Grundens has built gear you can trust to keep you fishing no matter the weather conditions. With head-to-toe coverage of high-performance outerwear, sportswear, footwear, and much more, it's no wonder Grundens products are backed by some of the bass fishing's most prominent figures, such as Skeet Reese, Randall Tharp, Adrian Avina, and Jonathan Van Dam, just to name a few. Grundens. We are fishing.
Yeah, and that's basically the difference. I mean, a lot of guys that are listening to this show, they are tournament guys, and so they're kind of used to that, the same thing. It's like, hey, we got to figure out, I'm sure you do a lot of research before you go to a lake on, hey, what is winning, a tournament here? What should I be catching, as I go there? Or just the knowledge of been doing it for so long that, I know when I go to Gunnersville, or I know when I go up to New York, and I go here, and you probably know the areas and what you're going to be catching. But when you lock that in, there are a lot of people out here that just fish their home lake all the time, and they just want to go out, have a good time. And I think that a lot of the stuff that you've talked about really gives them that good heads up on, hey, maybe I should be trying this. And I think not focusing on the on the forward-facing sonar right now probably is going to help, because I don't know that the average angler out there right now really, you're doing this for a living. You're out there on the water, and you're telling us how difficult it is to kind of understand that full range of that forward-facing sonar. It's a difficult thing to understand, I guess, and it's one of those ones
It's
that
not what I'm good for. If guys want to ban it, like, or what, you know what I mean? Like, it's really that powerful. I'm totally on the fence on whether they want to ban it, not ban it. Like, I see all sides of it to where I'm in the middle. I will tell you this: if they take it away from me, hey, we're going to be lost, bro. I don't know what I was even thinking about that yesterday. I think if they took it away from me, like, it would change even the way that I like to fish. It would change. It's that powerful of a tool. But with all that being said, you just said that I struggle to catch the suspended fish, doing the Demiki style fish and all that. Dude, it still takes a lot to fully understand what's going on with them suspended fish, how to find them, when they're going to be where, how to get them to bite. Like, there's a lot to that. Like, you just don't plug on an active target transducer and automatically just be a guru on how to chase fish around that act like birds and not fish, or not the fish that we're used to hunting. So there's a lot to, like, understanding it. It's very potent. I feel like it's a little too dominant. I'm not going to complain about it. I use it too. My issue is it's boring to watch. It's just boring to watch for me as a fan.
Yeah.
But what do we do? I don't know. If you ban, it's a tricky subject. I don't know your opinion on it, but not that we have to talk about that.
I say, honestly, I don't really
even
have
with all that being said, it's still not easy. Yeah, it's just still not easy to catch them. But, like, when you take guys that really do start to understand it and learn it, and you can't beat them doing anything else, that's when it gets to be a little bit ridiculous. And it's not fun to watch at the same time. So I don't know. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Just because you've got an active target doesn't mean you're just going to go catch them all. So I respect it. I just don't know if that's what's best for the future of everything. But
well, and and that's a great question, because we've talked about fishing, we've talked about getting people out there, and they're want to catch fish, and there's all this. I'm sorry, but there's just so much junk out there now. And I don't want to say it's junk like it's junky, but I mean there's just so much stuff out there. I mean it's. I've always said that probably the thing that has made the most impact on bass fishing, and agree or don't agree, but I still think it's the spot lock, being able to lock your boat in place, GPS, it doesn't move, it goes where you're at, retie, redo, whatever, be on a timeout because you flipped the fish the wrong way, hit a carpet, didn't hit a carpet, anything, you're out there on the water, you've had I think that changes a lot of stuff. Now guys are talking about, the forward facing sonar and how important that is, and what you got to spend to get it and how much it is. And like you said, what if they just took it all away and went back to, hey, you can use flashers and, and drift socks to get through your life. I think bass fishing changes at that point.
And I don't know if you do that, it changes the whole dynamic of everything though. You got to realize that too. Like if you take away forward facing sonar, as a shallow water guy, as mad as I'm definitely not a hater because I use it. Like I said, I do think it has some negative points, But like if you take as a shallow water guy, dude, most of my competition, let's just say half of my competition, they're out there beaming around trying to connect with the man on Mars and catch a fish, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm up beating the bangs, fishing, the way that I like to fish. Like I was saying, throwing a buzzbait, flipping whatever, up shallow. You take forward facing sonar away from everybody.
Yeah.
Now there's all of us up on the bank doing the same thing, beating up on each other. So, it changes that dynamic of that whole situation. So that's why I hate to say to get rid of it, because I think it would just take everyone a step back. We would all be we would almost possibly be on two level of a playing field if you was to do what you just described. Not that I'm against it, but man, there'd be a lot of guys doing the same thing, like on top of each other.
Right.
Too, so I don't know. In a lot of scenarios, I think that would play out a lot. I like the fact that guys have an option. I just don't like the fact that it's getting too much. It's just taken. If you don't have it in a lot of tournaments now, you might as well stay home. I don't like that aspect of it. Right. So I don't know. It's tricky.
It is. And I think it's one of those things that for a lot of people, it's still a financial thing for them. It's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And you had mentioned something probably, before we ever even started this show, we were talking and you said something and I said, you know what, that's a good question. But there are people that sit here and they watch, and I don't want you to bring the rivalries in, but we were talking about the college football versus watching the NFL versus watching, and you had said, I guess people probably look at me the same way as they would as the average guy going out fishing is college. The guys that you guys as the top anglers in the country out there fishing, you're the NFL. And people look at you that same way as, oh, this guy's got all the advantages. If I had what he had, I could do this. I don't believe that any way stretch, or way any form at all. I think that, you guys put in a ton of work besides this, but when you bring this forward facing sonar into it, everybody's got it on their boat. That's a top pro, but you still had to go buy it. You may get a discount here and there for your, sponsors and all that. But how much do you think it would make a difference if it was so affordable that everybody had it? How much difference do you think it would make for that average guy on the water if he spent the time to learn it?
Man, that's such a loaded question. I guess if the guy, the main question, if the guy was willing to learn it, I still think there'd be a lot of guys that wouldn't be willing to learn it, even if it was cheap.
Right.
Even if it was cheap. And I'm not I just think it is very time consuming to understand. And I think that even though obviously the top pros are using it with great success. I feel like the average person wouldn't spend enough time, as is they don't maybe spend enough time with every technique to really master. And the only point that I'm trying to make with that is it's not that easy. And you just heard me say I would be okay with them banning it, right? Like I just said that statement, but I'm also saying it is hard. It is not the easiest thing just to plug and play. I think for most people, it's not automatic. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make. It takes a lot of freaking work, regardless, to learn how to use that thing.
Bass Angler Magazine is your guide to better bass fishing. Bass Angler is dedicated to helping you catch more and bigger bass no matter what time of year or where you live. This is not your ordinary fishing magazine. Every issue is jam-packed with 30-plus articles from the world's best bass anglers. Bass Angler Magazine is available at bassanglermag.com, Tackle Warehouse, Bass Pro Shops, Cabela's, Gander Mountain, Walmart, and better tackle shops everywhere. Bass Angler also makes a great gift for any angler. Get Bass Angler today and start catching more bass tomorrow. Visit bassanglermag.com or your favorite tackle shop. This is not your ordinary fishing magazine. bassanglermag.com.
And that's kind of the point I was trying to make, was that I think the average guy thinks that, hey, I'm going to have forward-facing sonar on my boat, and if I do that, next week I'm fishing with Fletcher. I mean, we're on the we're competing, because that's it. It's over from there. I will have this thing and I will know it. And it's not one of those tools that, yes, is it a great tool? Yes. Do we want to sell them out there? Yes. Are people going to buy them? Yes. But you have to put in so much work. And I think one of the things that we do on this show is try to make people better fishermen. And I think the stuff that you talked about earlier, fishing shallow, fishing different ways. And one of the most important things you said in there is, if they took that away and said, you know what, forward-facing sonar is not going to be allowed, would people stop buying it? No, because they're not fishing those tournaments, so they'd be fishing ones that are. And two is that you would have people fishing go back to the old ways of fishing, where I have to find the targets to fish for. I can't focus on these fish that are out here because I have no way to find them anymore. So by you saying those things,
and then everybody is up there doing that.
Exactly. Everybody's going to be doing the same things. They're beating the bank. They're, looking at, and the guys who would excel back in the day, throwing crankbaits out deep ledges, just knowing that there were fish out there, guessing that there were fish out there, I guess is the best way to say it, or using electronics that were just only downwards, down facing, and that's it. And that's all you had, finding those schools and then marking them and going back and casting to them, and that sort of thing. All that would come back. But to make somebody a better angler, honestly, it's not about what you can afford to buy to put on your boat. It's doing the things that you talked about earlier. Because if you took those away, which most people don't have them, but if you took those away, then they would be doing the same things that they used to do. They would be beating the banks. They'd be looking for structure. They'd be looking for that stump. They'd be looking for those rock piles. They'd be the grass. They'd be looking for, old trees and that sort of thing. That's basically what you're saying, right? Not that don't buy it, don't try it, but you're saying, you know what, this is the way you need to learn how to fish, is learn the basics first before you decide to go out there and buy all this heavy equipment.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say, I think there are guys out there that maybe never spent a lot of time bass fishing,
right?
Or really understanding bass, that can take those electronics right now. This is what's kind of crazy about it, and actually do probably a lot of damage just by, because here's why I say that, because I feel like that whole forward-facing sonar train of thought, and the why it's maybe not as easy to me as it may be for someone else, is because the fish don't do what we thought they did. Like, I still have it in my brain that bass migrate into the backs of the pockets in the spring, and we're really coming to find out that there's a massive population of fish that we know nothing about. So having a trained brain and a trained mind to catch those fish would almost be a detriment to you, I think, because I think, no, I'm not talking about every lake, but there's a lot of lakes. Right. I think there's a lot of bass that live offshore, more that are very nomadic, just move around, swim around, and live under bait, very much like saltwater fish do, that are now exposed. But I think it just takes a different mindset to do that. I guess the way I would look at it too, back to the whole it takes a lot of work thing. Like, if a guy didn't spend enough time to get really good catching them shallow, what makes you think that if you gave him forward facing sonar, that he would put the amount of time in to get good at that, you know? But either way, it's they don't catch themselves. You got to do takes a lot of work to catch these things, don't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're out there. What do you fish, like 5 days a year?
Yeah, no.
That's how you got really good, right?
I definitely the last year I've spent a crazy amount of time on the water. I had a couple of life events the last couple of years, but I really overall it's still a lot compared to most. But I would say this year I've probably been on the water 4 days a week, which when you really think about it, it's a lot, you know.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But that helps, man.
I don't have to think very hard on that.
Yeah, I mean, it just helps so much being out there all the time, even though and it's not like obviously I think I've got it all figured out, but like you would think you'd get to a certain point, especially even on the same fisheries, that I don't need to be out there figuring it out. I already know the deal. I already know. And dude, you don't. And like, you've got to go out there so many times, so many days, you still have to refigure them out because it's never the same, you know, and you're constantly having to get in this, you know, problem solving stage in your mind to have to figure it out all the time, you know? So that's coming from someone that's done this for, you know, 12 years now professionally. And I'm still feel like being fishing as much as I can it helps me a lot, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's still some guys out there. I mean, Rick Clunn's still out there, right? So, I mean, if he hasn't got it figured out by now all the way, then I don't know who would.
That's a fact right there. There you go. Perfect example.
Yeah.
It's going to keep changing.
Right.
That's what's fun about it, though.
Yeah.
If it really was the same or the way that we want to think it is, that everything stays the same, it would be freaking boring. Let's be honest.
Wouldn't it? Well, and that, you know, and that kind of leads me to a couple of things. You know, we had talked about some of, you know, you had an open win in the BASS and you had some MLF Cup events that you've won. Now you fished both of these events, and you know, one of the things you said was, you know, fishing this way, you know, not to go back in time here and talk about the forward facing sonar again, but you know, you talked about how boring it is. Well, you know, to watch on TV. And that's basically where we're at nowadays, right? I mean, we're kind of like, you know what, guys want to see what you guys are doing, and they want to see it on TV, and they want to see it now. They want to see it live. They want to see it as it's happening. Which event have you, I mean, right now you're not fishing BASS, you're just fishing MLF, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So between the two, and I don't want you to really compare them, you know, completely, but the two events, I mean, they both have an upside, a downside, that sort of thing. Which one of you really felt like you fit the best in? Is it MLF right now, or is it just because that's where you've had more wins?
You know, it's funny. When MLF started, obviously the format was a lot different than BASS. The way we scored the fish, to the practice, no practice, all that. I was definitely, not that I want to say I'm good with no practice, but I felt like I was better than the majority of the guys without practice. So that was, you know, I was able to snatch up several MLF Cup wins, you know, that way, or individual days and things like that. I just, for a guy that's a visual target person, like I just feel like I do better overall with very minimal practice. So I think MLF from the beginning kind of suited me better. But I also think, you know, is when I started also doing better whenever I moved from Ohio to Guntersville. I fished 4 to 5 days a week, you know, and was literally like engrossed. Not that I wasn't engrossed in it before, totally into it before when I lived in Ohio, but you just could only do so much. Well, when I moved to Guntersville, fishing MLF, yeah, the scoring was different, but I was just catching them on just a much better level at MLF because I think the timing was there, right? Now I think it's to the point, or there's been a few years where I feel like I would have done much better in a 5-fish format, which we now have, right? And it would have served me better at BASS. So for me, I mean, I think it wouldn't really matter which organization I was in, as it was just where I was at what point in my life, you know what I mean, as far as how much time I'm putting forth and, you know, where my game's at the time, really, honestly, you know?
Yeah.
If my game's up, it doesn't matter which organization I'm fishing under. I don't think it would really matter. And there's a lot of guys, dude, that was like, you know, thinking I was going to do really well this year, that we're going back to 5 because my style has changed over the years since joining MLF. And for me not to catch them, it was like, oh, well, maybe 5's not your deal. And I said, look, like, do you understand how bad I would have finished if we'd have had to count every 2-pounder that I didn't catch today? Because I caught 5 all day. I remember at KU, I caught 5 that weighed 21 and a half. But I caught 5 all day. Like, that's just not very good. You know what I mean? If I was in all and people would say, oh, the best 5, it takes way more challenge. It's way more challenging to catch 5 big ones. Hey, we don't do that anymore, so I'm not trying to defend it. But dude, I'm really lucky this year that we didn't count all of them. I was not catching them. So yeah, the format to me, like, now it's obviously all 5 fish now, but what we had before, I think that it was, if you're catching them, you're catching them. If you're on your game, you're on your game. If you're not, you're not. I don't know if the format really changed that either way, you know? I do in some ways feel like I wish we had like a 10 fish limit. I think would be really cool, but that's a whole nother conversation. But anyway.
Well, yeah. And again, you don't have you're weighing fish in, you're not bringing them to the scales. You're still on your 5. And talking with, I get, this specific technique is boring to watch. Do you feel, because I know as a person who watches some of these events, I feel that the old way of every fish counts was definitely more exciting to watch. And the guy that was sitting on the lead, it was like he was never, in a couple events, I guess they felt pretty good, but they were never confident that that was it. Like, that was enough. Like, that, no, I've got to catch another fish. I've got to keep going, because if I don't, these guys are so good behind me that they are going to catch fish, and they are going to catch up to, hey, I got a 10-pound lead. That ain't nothing. If you don't have a 30-pound lead, you're not there. Do you feel that that's made a big change in the way that it's, I don't want to say boring to watch now, because if some guy gets 5 fish and he's up by 15 pounds, there's like almost no chance of anybody catching that. It's like, okay, well, he's pretty much going to win this thing. So why should I keep watching? What's your take on that?
Yeah, we've been back and forth so much. Obviously, being an angler at MLF, we all talk about it was never about, at least for me, it was never about what format do I prefer. Right. It's always been about what format does everyone want to watch, right? Mm-hmm. That's all I care about. We'll do whatever. And like I said, at the end of the day, I really don't think it matters that much. A lot of people seem to think that it did but I can tell you by doing it and playing both formats, catching them and sucking. Like it's, yeah. It really doesn't go much any other way the majority of the time. But I agree. I don't have the answer. I mean, I feel like we did the all you could catch thing. I feel like we did you say all you can catch, a 2-pounder is a pretty solid fish on most fisheries. It's an adult bass. Most places you go, it's really not that easy to catch. But a lot of people claim to think, I guess maybe at times we made it look that easy, or guys made it look that easy to catch, that aspect was boring. And we was hearing that crying that they didn't like the format because maybe there was too many being caught. And then you go, like you said, and the excitement was good at the end because kind of technically everyone was still in it, if things started to happen for someone. Whereas with a 5 fish, you get, like you said, you mathematically box guys out. Like it's impossible, right? Like you didn't have that with that old format, and it seemed like everyone wanted the 5 fish. And I feel like 5 fish can be extremely exciting, but overall it's pretty boring. And that's, I don't want to continue on anymore, but, I feel like the sport's been very stagnant for a long time. I'll just say that. Yeah. And, I don't know if going back to 5 was the best thing, but it seemed like the best thing that the fans wanted at the time. So that was the biggest reason for the change.
Okay. I mean, I get that. I've been to, the different championships, and I can say that a guy driving up on stage and pulling fish out of his bag that I have no idea how much he has is way more exciting than going up to a stage where he's pulling nothing out. And I already watched it on TV, so I know exactly what he has. And I don't want to bash Red Crest in any way, shape, or form, because I think they have a great, what they're doing is great. And I think it's important for there to be different styles in this fishing industry. And like you said, everything's been stagnant. And right now, I can definitely say it's not stagnant. It's definitely trying to find, but it is trying to find its way. Is it going to be the next NFL out there? Probably not. Is it, but that's what we'd like it to be, right? That's what we want to see is these large events, these large, the Super Bowl of bass fishing, is different. And like I said, I've been to Bassmaster, I've been to the Classic, I've been to Red Crest, and I've seen them both. And I've been to the championships and I've seen them, and I don't want to say which one I think is better, except for, I do like the overall weighing fish in at the scale. So that's what I'll say about it. But I mean, you have your point. This has been a very stagnant sport, and I think it needs to keep changing and needs to keep evolving because people do want to watch it now. People are looking for it, and I don't know how we're going to get to be the next NFL or the next, whatever. When you do, let me know.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the reason why I say it's never going to be the NFL or baseball or anything, if you just stop and think of the simple fact of most of the country right now, within a given reasonable 30-minute to an hour drive or walk, call it whatever, they aren't accessible to bass fishing. They're just not. Like if you look across most of the country, there's not even lakes around a lot of people. There's not enough water and there's just not enough for enough people to really understand it. But there's football fields and baseball fields in every small town across America.
Right.
There's basketball courts. There's all those things. So yeah, those people have an opportunity to participate in that sport, understand that sport. That's why it's become a bigger deal than fishing. Fishing is still huge though, when you look at the grand scheme of it. Now, is bass fishing tournaments going to be as big as the NFL? No. Because of the reason I just stated, I just don't think there's enough people, even though as big as fishing is and as many eyeballs that are on it, it's still not small. I think a lot of people are like, I wish it was that big. I still think it's pretty big for considering, right? But I just don't know if I just don't think it'll ever get to be that top tier level sport because just not enough people can relate. There's way more land than there is water within our country, and there's just not enough people that are going to understand it. And hey, honestly, as much as we want to grow the sport at the same time, if everyone fished, there wouldn't be a bass to be caught. So there's the positive side of
that. This is true. And I think one of the things you said there is people don't understand it the way that they do basketball, baseball, football. And it's not about anything other than they just don't understand it. They don't get why I will spend 8 hours on my boat trying to catch a green fish. It's like, what did you do? It's like, oh, that's great. How many beers did you drink? None. What are you talking about? That's how my grandfather did it. You sat on the bank and you did this and you drank a few beers and then you got up and came home with nothing. Okay. Well, this is not the same sport that we're in right now. And I think, like you said, until that becomes more of a norm, I think it was still shocking to me was when the thing that I heard the most when the cheating went on in the walleye tournaments, right, was these guys were talking about, God, did you hear that they were fishing for $100,000 or $30,000? And I said, so? To me, that just I mean, you guys are out there fishing for $100,000 all the time. That's, and more.
Yeah, it was that. There's a lot of people that didn't even really know that, that was even a thing, I think, when that was national news.
Exactly.
But here's what I'll say. Living in Guntersville, if there was a Lake Guntersville, if there was 5 Lake Guntersvilles in every state had 5 Lake Guntersvilles, or some kind of community like that, this would be, I don't want to say it would be as big as golf, but It would be a lot closer. That's actually probably a better comparison. There's golf courses everywhere in every county, basically, in this whole country. There's not many Guntersvilles. There's not enough people. Hey, golf's a weird sport. I like it. I think it's strange. A lot of people, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people watching. They make a lot of money hitting them little white balls around, right?
Yep.
But a lot of people can relate. I think fishing's the same way. It's just not enough people have been exposed to it.
Well, one of the things
there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, and one of the things that we talked about during this show that I think people don't get, and it's something you just said. People go around and they hit that little white ball because the reason they're intrigued is because they've done it and they know how hard it is to do that. People don't understand how hard it is to do what you do on these shows, on these, they turn it on and they say, oh, some guy's fishing. They don't understand how hard it is to do what you just did. If they went out there and caught 20 pounds every time they went fishing, they wouldn't care. When they go out and all they can catch is 5 pounds, 6 pounds, 1 2-pounder all day. And that was a very good point that you made. 2-pounder is a full-grown fish that's very hard to catch sometimes. How many times do you go out fishing and all you can catch is 1.25 pounds, 1.5 pounds? I've done it a bunch on lakes that I live around.
1 3/4.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, catch that 2-pounder. If people just start to understand how difficult it actually is, this sport, how actually difficult it is to do what you guys do, they might actually understand it a little bit more and go, wow, I just went out and spent $70,000 on a boat and put $30,000 worth of electronics on it and tow it with my, $80,000 truck. Okay, cool. Now go to the lake and catch, 15 pounds. Well, I could catch 5 today. Get it?
Right.
It's extremely difficult. This is not a sport that's super easy. This is a hard sport, a very hard sport to do what you guys do, because there's always a winner but there's always a loser too. And that guy worked his tail off just like you did, and he wasn't even close to what you caught, or she. That's the part that I don't think people get about what you guys do and how hard it is to do what you do.
But how would they ever know if they never was because of the way, like I was saying, without having them, they haven't been afforded the opportunity to even know. And you're never going to change that. I don't think, hate to say you can't make it bigger. I guess I'm saying that I don't think it will be, but that's not a bad thing because it still is big.
Oh yeah.
There's still a lot of eyeballs. There's a lot of participants still. It's definitely not a small. NFL size probably not, but it's still a big deal.
No, I get that, and and that's just end of the show stuff we're talking about, and I think the first part of this show has been, people should have learned a lot, because Fletcher just gave you some great information on this. But we are at the end of this. We do got to wrap it up. And I want you to let everybody know out there kind of how to get a hold of you, how to keep watching you, how to grow this thing, and how to really, how do they get a hold of you and pay attention to what Mr. Fletcher Shryock is doing out there.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Feel free to send me a DM on there. I'm on Facebook too. It's like /FS Fish, I think. Facebook /FS Fish. And don't be afraid to send me a message if you guys have any questions. And thanks for listening. If you made it this far, I appreciate it.
Oh, everybody made it this far. We don't ever lose. We got lots of viewers or listeners out there, and they're always here till the end. So everybody, thanks for tuning into this show. And, we really appreciate it here at the Bam Pod, you guys tuning in, because our numbers have been going up rapidly, and we do appreciate you tuning in. So in a couple weeks, we'll be right back out there, and we'll have another great angler like this one. And so thanks for tuning in. Y'all have a great night.